Hello, welcome to Classically Imperfect. I'm Mary Elizalde, one of the co-founders and the director of operations. And today I'm joined by Isabella Diaz, who is a student at the Royal Conservatory of Scotland. And today we're going to be talking about stress management while in conservatory and how to balance life outside of school and school in general. Hi, Isabella, how are you?
I'm good. And you?
I'm good too, thank you. Let's just get started. So, how did you get involved in music? What is your musical background?
I'm from Venezuela. So I started doing music when I was like really young, when I was like 3. My mom just put me in like choir and things like that. So I
Mhm.
started doing music since then. And then I moved to the States, to Florida, when I was 9. And I like played guitar and like I still did singing. But it was in high school, when I was almost 15. That's when I picked up French horn. And that's when I really was like, okay, I definitely want to do music, like, classical music, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, and then when I was 18, I came here to Scotland to study as an international student. And yeah.
That's very impressive. Like you just picked it up at 15 and got into conservatory at 18. Congratulations. So the first official question I have for you is, how was the conservatory audition process for you? Was it stressful? Was it okay? Because I've heard many mixed answers from different people, and usually it's always stressful. And I just wanted like your point of view, like if you have any tips, things like that.
Yeah. So at least for like French horn playing, we have like certain excerpts and certain things that are like expected of you to know. Like it's always like a Mozart concerto, like an exposition of that. You should always know. It's usually like Mozart 3 or something like that. Like there's certain pieces that are pretty standard to audition with. But saying that, it can vary. So the Royal Conservatory of Scotland, this school, like the one I'm in right now, that was my only international school I'd applied to. The other ones were Berkeley, Boston Conservatory, and New England Conservatory, and Temple University, which is in Philadelphia. So I applied to those in the States as well. And most of them, again, it was kind of the same thing. It was like a study, you can choose a study. Like it just depends. Some are really specific. Some even want you to do like one specific scale. And then there's some that just ask for a piece, two contrasting pieces, or like it's very different. But if it is pieces, like it is usually the same piece. Like it's never some weird piece. It's just like the standard ones that you should know. Um, but I found it, yeah, I found it a bit stressful because when I was in high school, obviously, I still had to focus in school. I still had to get good grades. But at the same time, I was like having to finish school and then go home and have a lesson because I was having, my audition in like 2 months. Because right when you start senior year, the auditions, for international schools, they're due in like December. And
Mhm.
then for the state, it varies, but it's usually quite soon when you enter your senior year. So like you already know where you want to go
Mhm.
right when you start senior year or before, just because it's just so fast. Like everything happens so fast. It's like, okay, I remember having like being at home, I was so stressed. I was like sitting on my computer because it was just like so many like expectations that like you need to apply to this one, you need to apply to that. And I was like on my computer typing like personal statements, which I hated. I hate doing any of like the typing
Mhm.
bios and things that I hate it. Like it's just and I still have to do it to this day, obviously. Like you have to do it your whole life, but that's like the worst thing for me. So I was like having to do it at like 1 a.m. I was like, oh, this is not healthy. But because you had to fulfill those deadlines because they don't care like if you miss it, too bad, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, it was stressful.
I
Yeah.
think one thing that most high schools, especially senior year, struggle to see is the audition process for example, musicians and dancers and just artists in general. Like there's so much more than just school and grades. And me at my school, it's a lot more lenient because it's an arts high school and they're very understanding. But I feel like that should just be in general everywhere, especially if your school knows that you're a musician. They should give you that advantage, to like, give you more time, give you more extensions, because it's not like you're slacking off. You're just you need to focus on your auditions and practicing. And
Especially when they know that, okay, that's definitely what they want to do. They're not going to study math or science. They're definitely wanting to do music. So like, yeah, my school wasn't an art school, but they were pretty, because I was like the student conducted, like they knew obviously I wanted to do music, like they knew I was going to do that.
Mhm.
So for me specifically, they were a little bit lenient, like the administration side, like they knew I was like, oh, can I step out of class so I can do a college interview? Because I would get like, for like an interview I had to do here because of the time difference.
Yeah.
I had to do at like 10 a.m., but I was in school. So I would be like to my guidance counselor, be like, please, 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 let me like just sneak out for like 10 minutes, do my interview, and then I go back to class. And they were actually really lenient. Like they were like, yeah, yeah, like that's fine. But I mean, I had some math teachers which were like the worst. I'd be like, no, you have to stay here. You can't go. I was like,
No, yeah, that's it's definitely like a universal thing that high schools should really take into account. But that leads me to my next question. How do you balance conservatory life with your social life? Do you find it hard when you have to, for example, I know practicing is a huge part of being in conservatory since that's what you're doing in conservatory, you're practicing your instrument. How do you balance just being a regular college kid, you know?
yeah. I'd say like at first, because I started college in 2020. So that was like obviously it was COVID year, like
Yeah.
all you could do is just be at home. And especially here in the UK, they were really strict. Like
Mhm.
it was like you would get fined if you were like doing something you weren't supposed to do. Like it was bad. But I really started to kind of see that was like my second year of
Mhm.
college. My first year, I was just at like the student dorms, and I had my friends and we would hang out, but there wasn't much in the conservatory, so I didn't feel like it was like, oh, it's so busy. But my second year, that's when I was like, okay, this is like a proper year of uni, and I honestly like how to balance it was on my phone. I have like my calendar app and I just have to plan it. Like I genuinely have to plan my day out.
Yeah.
Like say, okay, I'm definitely wanting to practice at, I don't know, 9 a.m. until 11. And then I have like a 2 hour break. Okay, I'm gonna hang out with a friend, or I'm gonna get coffee at the school cafe, or yeah, doing things like that, because there are some weeks that are like literally 9 to 9. Like especially when we have weeks are like symphony orchestra and we're there like 9 to 9 and you're like, help. So like even though it's great because you aren't doing music, you're doing something you love, but it does come to a point because it's so much that you're like, wait, I need a break.
Mhm.
So like it really helps that when friends are around, like, I have lots of friends in like the orchestra, so like we'll have dinner together or something like that. That helps, but also making sure in the weekend like we can rest or like we can go hang out together, things like that. I mean, that isn't, I mean, conservatory life, that's something that I didn't know was going to be like that. It's so busy. Like, at least here in RCS, it's so busy. Every week there's like something to do, something which is great, but like it's just really busy. But some weeks are more busier than others. So on the less busier weeks, like I try to like cramp in and seeing my friends and doing things like that, because there's some weeks that like I can't see them because I'm just like in audition mode or in symphony orchestra mode,
I
but it's
understand.
definitely like something that like you need to balance a lot. Like that's why like going on my calendar and just like booking. Like honestly, I know it sounds like crazy and be like, "Oh, I'm so busy." But genuinely like that's the only way that I can be like, "Okay, I can socialize, but I can also have me time, but I can also practice." And I can also eat as well, because there's sometimes that you actually have to like plan that as well
Oh
because it's just
yeah.
busy.
No, yeah, it's also good to like visualize. That way you're
Yeah.
like stressing yourself out, like I'm going to do this, but then later on I'm going to go with my friends, so it'll be okay. And it's important to have those coping mechanisms because I feel like a lot of people don't really, they like me, for example, I still struggle with this, but whenever I see something coming up, I just like my brain like just gets on fire and like I get really bad headaches just thinking about what I have to do. But you just do it and then go hang out with your friends afterwards, for example, or go get some coffee, like you said. Just finding things like kind of like rewards that I think that
Yeah.
really helps too, just
Yeah.
like your brain is in.
Yeah, no, no, yeah. No, I mean, I was just the only thing I was gonna add was like sometimes we do projects here like that it's kind of like essays that we have to turn in like an essay or something like that. And so usually, because everyone does this, they just leave it for the last week to turn it in or to start it or whatever. So you can see like all of us just like in a coffee shop, just doing our work, but being able to socialize, but also we're like, okay, let's do work. So that's actually a quite a good balance as well. Um, you see lots of people doing that week.
What is one thing you wish you knew before attending conservatory? Like something that you were just like, it was a complete culture shock and you just wish you knew ahead of time.
I mean, there's lots of things, but I would say one would be a little bit of what I just touched on. So basically, like how busy it was going to be, like how I actually have to plan my day or plan my week. Um, that kind of shocked me a lot because again, I didn't really get to experience that until my second year. I thought college was like how it was my first year during COVID, like it was like barely anything, but no. So that was one thing that I was like, I didn't know how busy it was going to be. But also, I didn't think it was going to be this stressful. Like, because I do get, I mean, all of us get really stressed because a lot of us are really afraid of missing out on opportunities. I think that happens to all musicians. Like, if someone's like, oh, we have a gig for you on Friday night, but you also have like a rehearsal like an hour before the gig. And then the next day you have to wake up really early for like your job or whatever. You know what I mean? It's kind of like knowing that you shouldn't sacrifice your own time or like the opportunity will come up again, but like people think that it's never gonna come up again. You know what I mean? Like people are really afraid, myself included, of missing out on opportunities, and hence that makes us like really stressed because we're like, what do I do? What do I do? Um, and so yeah, I didn't think college. I mean, that's just one reason, but like there's billions of reasons that it's like stressful. But we try, I mean, I myself try to really like when I know I'm stressed, I really just try to kind of do those little like treat myself and like go out for coffee with a friend or just like you know what I mean, because we're all like that's kind of like the beauty of it all, that like all of us are going through the same thing. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like all of us are stressed and that's okay. Like it happens. It's just it's okay. But like, you know, we do at the end of the day, we're gonna survive. We're gonna be there tomorrow. It's all gonna be okay. I think that everyone kind of gets really concerned of like, oh, I'm just working through this like one audition and that's my life. And like if I don't make it, then that's it. I'm never gonna become a professional musician, which is not accurate, obviously. But all of us kind of, you know, think, oh, like the world's gonna end tomorrow if I fail that audition, but it's not. It's gonna be okay. You know?
I think it's also like how we learned that the music industry was going to be like that you have to take every opportunity because it might not come up again or maybe someone else is going to take that opportunity, but it's okay to miss out on things like not something
Especially when it's like your mental health as well.
yeah,
Like, you know,
especially you need to balance like your mental well-being with doing with going to school and like conservatory. How do you balance practicing with rehearsals? Because my teacher, she told me one time that she struggles with improving as a professional musician because she's always in rehearsals and she's so busy. And that's kind of similar to conservatory since you guys are always in rehearsals. Or actually, I don't know how your conservatory works, but I know most conservatories, they're usually always in chamber rehearsals and orchestra rehearsals. And just how do you balance practicing with other things that you have to do musically?
mhm. So sorry, before I answer that, could I ask what do you play? I'm just interested.
Oh yeah, I play violin.
Oh, nice, nice, cool. That was it.
No worries.
Yeah, yeah, like that's a tough one because that happens to all of us a lot. Like we get put into a project, whatever that project might be, and again, we have rehearsals something like 2 to 9, like for a whole week or something. So, or something that's like 9 to 9 or some whatever. And where do you fit that practice in? Because you still have to work up for your performance class that you have in 2 weeks, or you know, your audition or whatever. So that's like really hard because at least for brass players, I don't know string players, but I'm sure you also get tired as well. But at least for brass players, like a lot of the times that we're like in rehearsals, our lips
Yeah.
like are dead. Like after that rehearsal, our lips are dead. You know what I mean? Or like if we practice too much in the morning, then in the afternoon when you have that big rehearsal that for that big solo, whatever, that's it. Like you don't have it because you know what I mean? That's really hard. I find that the hardest thing because I'm like, when is it enough? Like what I usually do when we have projects like that, I'll warm up in the morning, and then I'll warm up for like a good 30 minutes and not like overdo any like, oh, high crazy notes or anything. No, just literally like kind of, I guess, yeah, just like working and waking up your muscles. And then you play during the day. And then there's sometimes that like, that I do have the lips to play later on. But that's, it's really hard. Like there's sometimes that we have like, say, an hour and a half for lunch, but I have like a performance class the next day while I also have orchestra. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I need to practice for that, but like I also have orchestra. So like there's sometimes that in those lunch breaks I have to like go practice and I don't really get a break. And that's really bad. It's really bad because I'm like technically sacrificing my lunch because it's important to take care of yourself, obviously. And I'm also like sacrificing my personal time, but there's sometimes that that's a really hard bit. That is it like you ask yourself, is it worth sacrificing? Or, but I think it is because obviously if you have a performance class the next day, you want to make sure you've run over the piece before. But yeah, it's very hard. I think that the conservatories can do a lot better with that. I feel like something should be in place that I mean, obviously they might not know, but if you tell them, hey, by the way, I have like an audition in 2 days. Can I leave orchestra for like, I don't know, 20 minutes earlier? Can I miss the last hour or something so I can go practice for that? You know what I mean? Like that should definitely be an option
Yeah.
because they should be wanting to support you because you're not in college to play for the orchestra in college. You're in college so that you can learn how to be a musician and take the opportunities that are given to you. And I feel like sometimes they almost think like, no, you're in college to play for our orchestra. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
feel they could definitely do a much better job with that.
Yeah, that's
And maybe
definitely.
they do it in some schools. Maybe they do. And I don't know, but they definitely don't do it in my
Yeah,
school.
I feel like
So
that's definitely like a structural thing within the conservatory. Maybe there needs to be a change in how, not like necessarily like the how the whole conservatory works, but just like specific things like this, for example, just like understanding that musicians have also lives outside of just rehearsals. And I understand that it's conservatory and it's very strict and rigorous, but at the same time, like we're all human and sometimes it's a little bit too much.
yeah, I think there should definitely be something in place or maybe, yeah, somewhere, because I mean, I've done that in the past. I've been like, hey, can I get like a dep, someone to cover for you for
Mhm.
the last 2 hours or something. And then that's sometimes like what people do. Like when they have to miss a rehearsal, there's a lot of unspoken rules that you have to know as a professional musician. Like there's some things that I learned in college, but I didn't really learn. People just did it, and I was like, oh, that's how you do it. Like people don't really talk about that. Like the fact that you have to get a depth, at least for brass players, that's really important for us because we're only like usually one person to a part.
Yeah.
So like you have to get a depth every time that like you're not gonna be there. You get someone to cover your part. Your part should never be alone. Like you always cover for someone, or you always have to be. There's like a lot of little rules that like nobody really tells you. It's just like assumed that you should know that.
Classical music is very traditional and they really like sticking to tradition. And I feel like in this case, since it's conservatory, it's might have been the same structure for the last 100 years, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it should stay that way, especially since we're seeing an incline in musicians struggling with mental health and struggling to talk about things like this. And I think that it's really important just to talk about it, like you said, with your friends, because you guys are all going through the same thing. Like musicians go through the same things, but I feel like the only problem is we're too scared to talk about it, which is why we don't. But I feel like at this point, it's okay to talk about it because it's so common. And um for conservatories to just keep like allowing this to happen, I think it's more of like a structural problem that probably won't change for a while, since conservatories and classical music is so built on tradition. But I think it's definitely something that can spark conversation within conservatories and
Yeah,
with.
I was just going to add to what you said that like here at the conservatory here in Scotland, they offer like a therapy type of service for lots of us. And some of us do take it, like it's free. So like lots of us are like, yeah, we might as well then like pay for like a really, expensive psychologist. But so lots of us do that. But again, like it's not really something that's talked about. Like it's on the website and it says like counseling help and blah 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 blah, which is great. It's great because it's free and it's really accessible.
Mhm.
But I feel as though when you're struggling with mental health, it's just a lot of the times I found it, and I'm not talking about myself really, but I'm talking about I've seen lots of my friends who have kind of been extremely overwhelmed, right? And like a head of department knows, you know what I mean? And they just keep like putting them into things, giving them more stress essentially, which is not helping at all for them. Um, so yeah, and again, they do have the counseling services, but I feel like it would be so much better if the actual teachers and head of departments and head of blah 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 knew about, hey, this person is clearly overwhelmed, don't put them in more things, or like, you know what I mean, like just for a while or something like that. I think just the communication, I would say.
Mhm.
I'm not, I don't know if this happens. I mean, I'm sure it happens in the States. I'm sure it happens in lots of places, but it's
Mhm.
just, it definitely needs to be talked about more because it is. And it's just kind of like, here we have the resources. There you go. No one's going to help you with that. Just here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I feel like they could do a much better job and kind of, yeah, just having your teachers. I have an amazing teacher at home, my home teacher, who's helped me so much. Like no therapy, no friend, nobody has done what he's done for me. Like he's helped my confidence so much, and it's literally just been because I've been like, hey, I'm stressed. Like I'm just stressed, and I feel like I'm not doing this good, or I feel like I'm not getting enough opportunities, or blah blah blah, whatever. And it's crazy like how your own mentors or tutors like can help you so much with that. And I wish like more people were like that, or else
Yeah.
we wouldn't have so many people kind of quitting music because their teacher told them they weren't good enough or things like that, because it happens all the time
Yeah,
you know
definitely. I actually had a teacher who, she didn't tell me that, but she was just it was a very toxic environment. And every time we had like violin sectionals, she would always ask me to play by myself in front of everyone. And then she would criticize me in front of everyone, but she wouldn't do it to anyone else. It was just me. And it got to a point where it was so bad for my mental health. Like I just ran out crying. And one of the other teachers was like, "Are you okay? Like, what's going on?" And I told her what was happening. Nothing happened. She continued to do it, which was, yeah, I just thought I would mention because anyways, but
no.
another thing
No,
that
like it's horrible. Like I've
I
had teachers like that in the past, and I mean, so many. I mean, you hear horror stories of people like literally just like quitting their passion because this one teacher who they really looked up to just quit on them. Like people like that shouldn't be allowed to teach. Like I'm a believer that they should kind of have a certain like an annual, even before you start the school year, whatever, an annual kind of like course on like what not to do as a teacher. Like all
yeah.
the staff should attend that. Like they should do that in every school. Maybe they do that in some schools, but yeah, they should definitely do that because lots of people like this teacher that I was just talking to you about, that's like been like such like a mentor. He's like in his 30s, and
Mm,
there's teachers who have not been nice at all, who've told me literally like, oh, you wouldn't get into a master's program, or like, oh, you wouldn't get into this or that, like things like that. And they're like in their 50s and 60s. Now, I'm not saying that's like, oh, it's definitely like a generation type of thing. No, I'm not saying that, because there's definitely like so many teachers who like are amazing, and they're in the 60s or whatever, they're that generation. But there's definitely like a theme in like it's called an old generation for a reason, because lots of those type of teachers back then,
Mhm.
their teaching methods like were just really harsh, like, you know what I mean. They obviously, that wouldn't be allowed today, in today's day, that wouldn't be allowed. But
Mhm.
like back then, that was kind of, and if you weren't ready for your lesson, or if you just had a bad day, because we all have it, you just be like, oh, I never want to see you again, or things like that, you know what I mean? Like that's horrible. I would hate for that to happen to me.
And it's so common too. Like it happens everywhere. And it's kind of just like, why does it keep happening to like almost every musician? Do you think there are enough mental health resources within the classical music community? And if not, what's something you think conservatories or just music, the music industry in general, can do to kind of bring awareness to it?
Yeah, so I think now, like 2023, there are um a lot more resources for mental health. There's loads of accounts on like Instagram and like things like that, that actually like are really, really helpful for mental health. And obviously websites and like counseling and things like that. It's still not enough for sure. Uh yeah, it's not enough, but I feel that has to do a lot with the actual institution that you study in. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like I wish, because yes, the internet has been amazing for all of those, resources. But I wish it was more normal. Like I wish it was more talked about by the actual teachers in the institution that you study in. You know what I mean? Like I wish there was almost like a lecture of like, and there has, I mean, the people do give lectures all over the world about this, about classical wellness, and like how to be a better musician, like mental health wise and things like that. Like that is a thing, thankfully, 2023 we are there, but it's definitely not enough. And I
Mhm.
think that the own teachers at the institution, not having someone come, just some random person, to be like that, no, but the actual teachers themselves would be extremely helpful if they talked about it. If they're like, guys, if you're struggling, like that's okay. Like if you think we've given you too much, just tell us. Like, you know what I mean? No one's gonna get penalized, or you know. But I definitely wish it was more talked about, because that would make a huge difference.
I definitely agree. I feel like if more teachers and like administrators
Mm.
just would open up about it a little bit more, and it might be something that the students could also bring up a little more. But like I said before, it's a hard topic to just bring up out of nowhere, and you don't want to catch someone when they're feeling vulnerable to have to explain that to one of their teachers, for example. I think it can be something that is going to come with time. It might be a lot of time. It might be within the next year. It just depends on bringing up the conversation, how where that goes and how far it goes, especially like I said, in a music industry that's so rooted in tradition and might not see the issues that we as students see, which is a little ironic since most teachers were music students. I just
Yeah.
don't know. It might just be that when they were in school, they didn't have those issues or they didn't see it that way, but
I mean, I think they definitely did. It was like you were weak. Like you were weak if you were struggling, or like, oh, that's just like the classical musician life. Like you're always stressed, and if you don't like it, sucks.
yeah.
Choose another career. Like I feel like that's how it was, and it's not. No, like I love classical music. Like I want to keep doing music, but I want to do it in a healthy way. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I don't want to do it in a way that I'm like I'm dying. You know what I mean? Like I'm always stressed, or like I'm sacrificing meals because I have to practice, or you know what I mean? Like I definitely. I wish if everyone could be so understanding, because
Yeah.
we all struggle with this. No one's perfect. No one's like has it together 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? And all of us know it. Like all of us know it. But it's kind of just like, oh, sucks. That's how it is. You know
Uh,
what I mean? No.
so, but I'm really glad that like more people are starting to talk about it, and I'm hoping
Yeah.
that we as an organization can kind of like help people and like guide them to also talk about it within themselves and to their conservatories and their teachers and stuff. Yeah, that's all the questions I have for you today. Thank you for joining me. If you want to learn more about Classically Imperfect, go ahead and visit our Instagram. You can follow us at classicallyimperfect.org. Email us if you have any questions. Thank you so much again, Isabella.
Thank you.
Bye.